He stood up at the birthday dinner I helped organize, the one I paid for down to the candles and the steak, and looked me square in the eye with my name still on his ID, and said, "You're a waste of my bloodline." 7 words. 7 sharp, surgical words. Not shouted in anger, not whispered in confusion. No, he said it loud enough for everyone at that table to hear. Clarisse, her sisters, her cousins, the server who was just refilling the wine. He said it like he meant it, like he practiced it, like it was a line he'd been saving up his whole life to deliver on cue. And when he said it, the whole room went silent. Not one fork clinked, not a single breath stirred. Just me, sitting there, heart pounding in my chest, trying to remember if I was even alive in that moment, or already dead on the inside. I didn't shout. I didn't slap the table. I didn't scream like some bitter man unraveling in public. Nah, I just blinked. One slow blink, that's all. And while they sat there watching for the explosion, what they got was my exit. Because sometimes silence says more than 1,000 curses ever could. Sometimes walking away, calm, quiet, and cold, that's the real earthquake they never see coming. Let me rewind for a second. Let me tell you what they don't know about that moment. Because when he said I wasn't worthy of his bloodline, what he didn't understand is that I never tried to be his blood. I just wanted to be his backbone, his shield, his father. For 19 years, I gave him everything I never had growing up. I didn't raise him to be perfect. I just raised him not to feel the emptiness I once carried in my own bones. But you can give your heart to people, and they'll still spit it out like it's spoiled. Welcome back to Betrayal HQ Stories, where men who've been broken don't beg, we rebuild. If you've ever been told you weren't enough by someone you gave your whole life to, then this story is for you. This is where silence speaks, and pain becomes purpose. If you're new here, make yourself at home, hit subscribe, drop your story in the comments, and stay close. Because around here, we don't believe in revenge for revenge's sake. We believe in quiet transformation. We believe in becoming something stronger when they expect you to fall apart. Before those 7 words shattered me, my life was quiet, steady, built like a house that may not have had chandeliers, but it never let in the rain. I had a rhythm, a purpose, and for a man like me, who came up with no father, no blueprint, and nothing but foster homes and God's grace, that was enough. I lived on the south side of Chicago, not the shiny part they show in tourist ads, but the real part, where men earned respect by how they moved, not how they talked. My home was a 2-bedroom brick house tucked between 2 sycamore trees that bloomed like clockwork every April. The kind of house you pass without noticing, but inside, it held the life I fought like hell to build. My mornings started early, always before the sun. Coffee black, no sugar, news on low volume. I'd lace up my steel-toe boots, kiss Clarisse on the cheek, and leave before she or Isaiah ever opened their eyes. Some people look for glory in their days. I looked for stability. That was my peace. We didn't have vacations or flashy cars, but we had meals at the same table every night. Clarisse loved to hum old Anita Baker while she cooked, and Isaiah would sit across from me talking about school, sneakers, or how he dropped 15 points in his last game, and I'd listen fully, like whatever he said was the most important thing I'd hear all day. Every Sunday morning, I ironed his dress shirt for church, even when he got old enough to do it himself. I'd shine his shoes, not because he couldn't, but because that's what my soul knew love to be. Quiet service. Daily investment. I never needed him to notice. I just needed him to feel secure. We had photo frames on every wall. Birthday parties, school awards, that one trip we took to St. Louis when he was 9. I remember that trip like it was yesterday. The way he held my hand crossing the street. The way he called me dad in front of strangers like it was the most natural word in the world. That 3-letter word meant everything to me. At night, I'd check his homework, sit in the worn recliner by the window, and reread the same book 3 times just to stay awake. Then I'd look over at him, asleep on the couch after a movie night, and I'd think, this is the life I never had, and now I get to give it to someone else. That's what my world was. A quiet fortress made of sacrifices no one applauded, and I didn't mind, because love to me was never about being seen, it was about showing up. But the thing about building a world with your bare hands is that the ones you build it for can still find a way to set fire to it. Let me tell you about the people I built my life around. Not strangers, not enemies, family. The ones you give the biggest pieces of yourself to, because you never imagine they'll be the ones to break you. Clarisse, my wife. A woman with sharp eyes and a softer voice when she wanted it to be. We met at a church picnic on the west side. She laughed like someone who hadn't been through pain, but I learned later, that's just how some people hide it. She had Isaiah already, 2 years old, wide-eyed, didn't talk much, but he clung to her leg like the world outside had never shown him warmth. And when I looked into that boy's eyes, I saw myself. I saw the silence I used to carry. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about legacy. Clarisse could be kind. She could also be cold. But I blamed that on her upbringing. She never disrespected me to my face. Not directly. It was always sideways, through tired smiles, missed thank yous, and backhanded compliments like, "You're not like most men, but that's probably why you're not rich." Her sisters, don't get me started, always in our business. One of them, Dana, never looked me in the eye. She'd smirk when Isaiah ran to her first at family gatherings, like she was keeping score, like she knew something I didn't. And then there was Isaiah himself, my boy, or the boy I raised like he was. From age 2 to 21, I fed him, taught him, prayed over him. I called him champ, and he called me dad, at least until high school. That's when things started changing. It was subtle, like the way he started calling me E around his friends, or the way he flinched when I put my hand on his shoulder in public. And that one time, when I drove him 4 hours to a tournament, and all I got was a quick nod instead of a thank you. It stung, but I brushed it off, told myself, that's just how young men are. He'll understand when he's older. I remember one morning, he was maybe 17, Clarisse made a comment under her breath. We were in the kitchen, and she said, "I hope he gets his work ethic from you, not his bloodline." She said it with a smile, like it was a joke, but the air shifted when she said it, and I felt it, deep, like a warning shot I didn't take seriously enough. Even the guys at work noticed. "You're always doing too much for folks who barely notice," one of them told me. But I didn't listen, because when you love people, your ears don't work the same. I had friends, or maybe just co-workers who'd invite me out for drinks, but I always said no. I wanted to be home. I thought being present was enough. I thought being steady would earn me something money couldn't buy. Respect, gratitude, love that didn't have to be proven with blood. Looking back, I wasn't surrounded by family. I was surrounded by people I convinced myself were home. People I believed would never forget the man who showed up for them day after day, year after year. But love isn't always remembered. Sometimes it's repaid with silence. Or worse, with 7 words you never saw coming. If you strip away the work boots, the bills I paid, the birthdays I never missed, what was I really fighting for? It wasn't money. Lord knows, I was never chasing wealth. I didn't grow up with any, and I never needed it to feel like a man. It wasn't praise either. I didn't need anybody clapping for me. The world's loud enough with fake applause. I just needed to matter. I needed to prove, maybe to the world, maybe just to myself, that I could become the kind of man I never had. See, I never met my father. Not once. Not a phone call. Not a photo. Just stories, and not good ones. He was the kind of man who left bruises instead of guidance, who gave excuses instead of presence. So I made a promise, when I was 16 years old, sitting on the edge of another stranger's foster home bed. I said, if I ever have a child, he'll never have to wonder if I love him. He'll feel it in the food, in the clothes, in the time, in the way I show up, every single day. And when Clarisse handed me Isaiah's sippy cup and asked if I could help her out, just for a while, I didn't hesitate. That boy had a father from that moment forward. But it wasn't just about being there, it was about being seen, being respected, not as a replacement, not as a helper, but as a father. I didn't need Isaiah to worship me, I just needed him to be proud, to know that everything I did was to protect him from ever feeling what I once felt, like an afterthought, like a mistake. What hurt most wasn't that he didn't look like me, it was that he stopped looking to me, he started looking through me, like I was furniture, like I was optional, like love, time and years meant nothing without matching DNA. But I wasn't raising him to carry my blood, I was raising him to carry my name, my values, my sacrifices. That name, Carter, that meant something to me, because I built it from scratch. No father to guide me, no legacy handed down, just grit, mistakes, and a refusal to leave any child behind the way I was left. So when people ask what broke me, it wasn't just the words, it was what those words meant. That all this time I wasn't his anchor, I was just a convenience, a stand-in, disposable. And when your whole manhood is built on the idea that you're creating something better for the next generation, and that generation throws it in your face like trash, that's when you realize you weren't holding the family together, you were the only one holding on. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't kick the door in, it cracks it open slowly, and lets the cold seep in. The first shift was subtle. Clarisse stopped asking how my day went. I'd come in, boots muddy from overtime, and she'd be on the couch, phone in hand, smile fading the second she saw me. I told myself she was tired. We all were. Then it was the meals. She used to make extra enough for seconds. Suddenly it was just enough for 2. Hers and Isaiah's. Said she figured I'd already eaten at work. I hadn't. Money started going missing, small things at first, a few hundred here, a forgotten bill there. I asked gently. She brushed it off like I was imagining things. I told myself it was stress, just stress. One night, I came home early. Overtime got cut short. I walked in, and Clarisse was on the phone, whispering. When she saw me, she jumped, not like she was scared, like she was caught. Said it was Dana, but she never called Dana baby before. And Isaiah, he started pulling away too. Stopped coming home right after school. Stayed locked in his room with the door half shut. Not angry, just distant, detached. And when I'd knock and ask if he was okay, all I'd get was, yeah, I'm good. There was one night I'll never forget. We were watching an old movie, one we'd seen together a dozen times. Usually he'd laugh, lean on my shoulder, say the lines with me. This time, he sat on the far end of the couch. When I looked over, he was texting. Didn't laugh once, didn't look up. When I said, "You remember this part?" he said, "Not really." It was like I was fading in real time. Like my presence was a thing they tolerated, not something they leaned on anymore. I still kissed Clarisse goodnight. Still left gas money in Isaiah's glove compartment. Still made sure there was milk in the fridge and new socks in his drawer. But the house felt colder. Not in temperature, in spirit. Looking back now, it was all there. The silence, the small walls, the laughter I wasn't part of, the secrets they thought I couldn't feel. But when you love someone, really love them, you don't assume betrayal. You assume they're just having a bad day. And when those bad days stretch into months, you tell yourself it's a phase, a fog, something you can outlast. Because that's what loyalty does. What I didn't realize is that I was the only one still fighting for us. Sometimes I wonder if they remember the moments I can't forget. Like the night Isaiah had his first asthma attack. He was 6. Clarisse froze. I didn't. I carried him out to the truck barefoot, shirtless, in the dead of winter. Drove with one hand on the wheel, one hand on his back, whispering, "Just breathe, son, stay with me." Or that summer when he broke his wrist at the playground, I took off 3 days from work to stay home and keep him company. We played Uno, built Legos, and I taught him how to shuffle cards like a grown man. The pain in his arm faded before the laughter did. At least, I thought it did. I remember the time we were broke, really broke. Car needed a new transmission. Isaiah needed shoes for the basketball team. I picked the shoes, took the bus to work for a month, and told him the walking was good for me. He never knew the difference. I never let him see me lack. There were good moments too, like his 10th birthday. I worked double shifts all week, just to rent out a space at the roller rink, decorated it myself, blew up every balloon until my fingers went raw. When he walked in and saw Isaiah's world on the banner, he ran up and hugged me like I was a superhero. Or the day he called me dad for the first time without being told to. He was 5. We were walking past the park and he tripped on a crack in the sidewalk, scraped his knee. I knelt down, wiped the blood, and he said real soft, "Thanks, Dad." I didn't even react. I didn't want to scare the moment away. Those memories live in me like tattoos on my soul, permanent, deep, sacred. And maybe they've forgotten. Maybe they've moved on like none of it meant anything. But for me, those were the building blocks of who I became. I didn't raise Isaiah for credit. I didn't sacrifice for applause. I did it because I believed in something bigger than biology. I believed in presence, in consistency, in love that shows up even when no one claps for it. But now I look around and I feel like a ghost in the house I built. The boy I carried doesn't look at me the same. The woman I protected no longer speaks with warmth. And all those moments, those years, feel like stories only I remember. It was Isaiah's 21st birthday, a milestone. One of those nights where a father looks at his son and thinks, I made it, he made it, we made it. Clarisse planned a big dinner, long table at a downtown restaurant, candles, reserved signs, napkins folded fancy. She invited her sisters, Isaiah's girlfriend, even a few old cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone showed up dressed to impress, and I showed up proud. I wore the same blazer I wore to his high school graduation, still had the thank you card he wrote me that day tucked in the inner pocket, creased and fading, but never forgotten. At the table, I sat at the far end, didn't mind, I was just happy to be there. I ordered his favorite wine, toasted the waiter when they brought out the cake. Every time Isaiah laughed, I laughed with him, quietly, like background music. That's what fathers do. And then he stood up to give a toast. Everyone clapped. I leaned back and crossed my arms, smiling, thinking, this is the part where he says something about perseverance, maybe even a small nod to the man who raised him. But that's not what happened. He raised his glass and said, I just want to thank everybody who's been really there for me, the people whose blood actually runs through mine. A few people chuckled. I didn't. My hands froze. Clarisse shifted in her seat, but didn't say a word. Dana bit her lip to keep from smiling. And Isaiah, he just looked at me. Then he said it. Clear, loud, calm. You're a waste of my bloodline. You're not even my real father. Just like that. No yelling, no build-up.
Just a cold sentence dropped like a dagger onto the table I helped pay for. My fork hit the plate. That was the only sound I made. No one moved. The music kept playing. The candles still flickered. And I just stared at him. Not angry, not broken, just emptied. He sat back down, took another sip of wine, laughed with his cousin like he didn't just set fire to the man who carried him farther than biology ever could. Clarisse never looked my way, not once. No defense, no correction, just quiet approval, like she'd been waiting for someone else to say it, so she didn't have to.
And that's when I knew I was done begging to be seen. I folded my napkin, placed it gently on my plate, and walked out. No goodbyes, no slammed doors, just the sound of my boots on marble as I left that table, and everything attached to it. Didn't go straight home that night. I walked out of that restaurant with a straight back and a steady pace, but inside, I was hollow. My hands were shaking, but I didn't let them show it. Not until I reached my truck. I opened the door, got in, closed it slowly, and then, nothing. I just sat there, engine off, darkness pressing against the windows, like the world knew I needed the quiet. I must have sat there for over an hour. No music, no headlights, just me and the sound of my own breathing, my own disbelief. I sat in my truck, keys still in the ignition, wondering how the hell we got here, how a man who built his life around sacrifice ended up erased with one sentence. I ran through it in my head like a broken record, the scraped knees I bandaged, the science fairs I showed up to, even after 12-hour shifts, the nights I stayed up so he could sleep knowing somebody had him, and still, I wasn't real enough. That's the part that cuts the deepest, not just the words, but the casual way he said them, like it had been sitting on his tongue for years, waiting for the right crowd to humiliate me in front of. He didn't yell, he didn't lash out, he delivered it, like a line from a play he'd been rehearsing, calm, calculated, cold, and me, I was frozen in time, couldn't even bring myself to cry. Not yet. The pain hadn't even registered properly. It was still crawling through my veins, looking for where to land. That truck seat felt like a coffin, and I was buried in memories no one else remembered. I could have driven to his apartment, knocked on that door, demanded an answer, but I didn't, because when someone looks you in the eye and tells you you're nothing, you don't argue, you just finally believe them. Isaiah at practice, ironed shirts, nodded quietly in the back of the room. What they didn't see, what they'll probably never know, is the weight I carried behind that silence. They didn't know I paid off Clarisse's debt 3 months before we got married. $10,000, credit cards, medical bills, a payday loan she was too ashamed to tell her family about. I didn't ask for thanks, I just wanted us to start clean. They don't know I knew about the affair. Yeah, I knew. It happened around year 7. A man from her job. She told me it was emotional, that nothing physical ever happened. I didn't believe her, not really, but I forgave her anyway. Not because I was weak, but because Isaiah was 9, and I didn't want his world shattered just because mine was. You ever stay in a house where the walls are cracked but the photos still hang straight? That was my marriage. We didn't argue loud, we just stopped speaking truth. I kept it going because I still believed the foundation mattered. I still believed in family, even if I was the only one holding the door open. And Isaiah, that boy doesn't know I skipped my own job interview to attend his middle school basketball tryout. I had a shot at a better position, better hours. But I chose to be in the bleachers that day instead, because I didn't want him to look around and wonder why no one came. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. I shut down sometimes. I worked too much. I gave too little of myself to myself. But everything I had, my time, my money, my peace, I poured into that house, and now I was being treated like I'd just wandered in off the street, like I hadn't bled for them behind the scenes. The betrayal didn't start with the words. It started the moment they forgot what I held back just to keep everything together. I wish I could tell you that birthday night was the end, that I walked out, started healing, and left it all behind with a clean conscience. But healing don't come that easy, not when the hurt keeps knocking. 3 weeks after I disappeared from their lives, I stopped by the house one last time, quietly, no intention to go inside, just needed to see it, to let go on my terms. But when I pulled up, something hit me different. A strange car in the driveway, a new one, windows tinted, tires still shining like they just left the lot. I knew it wasn't Clarisse's, and Isaiah didn't drive anything that clean. So I waited, watched, and after a few minutes there she was, Clarisse, walking out to grab something from the trunk, wearing the same hoodie I bought her for our 10th anniversary, the one she swore she'd never wear for anyone but me, and right behind her, a man, laughing, wearing my house shoes. I didn't need a closer look, I didn't need answers. That right there, that was the final message. She had already replaced the man who built that home. The ink on our silence wasn't even dry, and my spot was already filled. That night I drove to the storage unit, the one with the fireproof box I kept under lock and key, birth certificates, letters, copies of everything I ever put my name on for that house. I opened the folder, and that's when I saw it. The deed, updated, my name removed, quietly, legally. She'd been planning this, way before the birthday dinner, way before the toast. I'd been erased behind my back, not just emotionally, but legally, systematically, like I was just a phase they needed to survive. You know what it feels like to give your soul to a home and realize the people inside it were already making space for your absence. That was it. The moment the switch flipped, no more explanations, no more hope, no more bargaining with the people who fed off me and still found a way to call me nothing. That house wasn't mine anymore, and neither were the people in it. I didn't lose them, they gave themselves away. All I had to do was finally see it. I didn't blow up her phone, I didn't bang on the door, I didn't demand answers or fall to my knees asking why. That's the version of me they expected. That's the version I buried that night. Instead, I went home, not to the house, to the place I was renting, quiet and unfurnished, just a mattress on the floor and a duffel bag in the corner, and I sat there in the dark, thinking, not feeling, thinking, because there comes a point where pain burns through your chest so long, it stops hurting and starts sharpening. The next morning I got up before the sun, dressed like it was a work day, and I went to the bank, closed the joint account, froze the college fund I built in Isaiah's name, took every receipt I ever kept, mortgage payments, tuition transfers, holiday trips, even that roller rink deposit from his 10th birthday, and made copies. Then I called the lawyer, not for revenge, not to take anyone down, just to clean my name off what was no longer mine. I didn't want their mess, I just wanted peace, but this time on my terms. There's a power in saying nothing. They expected me to break, to show up angry, to beg, to scream in the middle of the street like a man with no dignity left, but I didn't. I moved in silence, like a shadow collecting its own pieces. Every paper I filed, every password I reset, every copy I notarized. It wasn't about spite, it was about clarity. I finally understood. I wasn't the one who broke this family. I was the glue they used until they found something shinier, and now I was peeling myself off the wall they'd built their lies on. You can burn a man's trust, you can spit on his name, you can take the seat he built for you at his own table, but when he decides to walk away without a word, you'll feel it louder than any scream. Revenge didn't look like shouting, it didn't look like slashing tires or exposing anyone online. That's childish. No, my revenge started like a whisper. First thing I did was stop paying the mortgage, not the whole house, just my half. Let Clarisse feel what silence feels like when the bills come in with my name missing. Then I transferred the title of the car I bought her, not to her, but to my name alone. Quietly, legally. She'd find out when the renewal notice came. I cancelled the card Isaiah had been using for gas, the one I let him swipe without asking since he was 16. I said nothing, let him learn what not a real father feels like when the tank hits E. I changed my emergency contact at work, took them both off my health insurance, moved my direct deposit to a new account. She didn't notice, he didn't ask, and I didn't explain, because people who think you owe them explanations don't deserve them. At night, I started recording voicemails, not to trap them, for myself, so I'd never forget the tone of their voices once the mask slipped. Clarisse left one after I cut off the money. I just wish you would talk to me. Talk. You don't get to betray a man and ask for conversation after the damage is done. You get silence, you get distance, you get the quiet echo of your own decisions. Isaiah called once, just once, said, I didn't mean it like that, but he did. And even if he didn't, I believed him the first time. I wasn't about to unhear the truth just because he got uncomfortable living in it. I wasn't taking anything from them. I was just returning their energy with interest. People think revenge is loud, that it shows up with a bang. But the real kind, it's quiet, legal, patient, precise, and when it lands, it doesn't make noise. It makes them realize they were never untouchable. They were just used to a man who never fought back. There were nights I laid in that empty apartment with nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and my own thoughts, and I asked myself if I was becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. Maybe I should have walked away clean. Maybe I should have let them have it all. The house, the name, the memory of me. Maybe silence wasn't strength. Maybe it was surrender wearing armor. I'd never been the man who plotted, never been the man who moved in shadows, but when they turned their backs on me like I was just a placeholder, something shifted, and I wasn't sure if what I was doing was healing or just hurting differently. I thought about Isaiah a lot, not the one who raised a glass and called me a waste, but the little boy who once fell asleep on my chest after a nightmare and whispered, "Don't leave." Was that boy still in there? Or had I stayed too long, given too much, and created a man who would someday say those 7 words without blinking? Sometimes, I wondered if I was punishing him for growing into what life shaped him to be, and sometimes, I wondered if I just couldn't live with knowing none of it had ever really been mine. Revenge can feel like justice when you're planning it, but when you're living in it,
it gets quiet, real quiet, and in that silence, you start asking questions nobody can answer but yourself. But the thing about betrayal is, people think it ends when they say the words. They think your silence means they won. That was Clarissa's mistake. That was Isaiah's too. They thought because I walked away I was out of moves. They thought because I didn't scream I was done playing. But life has a way of spinning the wheel, of showing you what real absence feels like. Clarissa's car, repossessed. The bank called her before I did. Isaiah's tuition refund, denied. Turns out, when your financial cosigner disappears, so does your safety net. They started calling again, messages piling up. Can we talk? Why are you doing this? But here's the truth. I wasn't doing anything. I was just done. Clarisse made the mistake of thinking love was an obligation, that a man who raised her son without question would keep bleeding for them even after they drained him dry. Isaiah made the mistake of thinking I was temporary, a substitute. But real fathers don't have expiration dates, and when you turn on one, you don't just lose help, you lose history. They didn't expect to need me, but life doesn't move in straight lines, and when their world started cracking, they realized the man they dismissed was the only one who ever held the foundation. I never kicked a door in, never yelled down a hallway, never posted a single thing on social media. I didn't even tell my side of the story. I just let the truth deliver itself. Clarisse got the first letter on a Tuesday morning, certified envelope, signature required, eviction notice. My name had never been off the lease, the house they'd remodeled around me, the one she swore I had no right to anymore. I still held legal stake, and I decided it was time to dissolve it. Isaiah got his the same day, not from me, from the Scholarship Foundation, a polite notice. His sponsor had withdrawn funding. He called the number on the letter. They told him to speak with Elijah Carter. He didn't have my new number, and then came the bank. She tried to swipe her card and it declined. Tried again, nothing. She called the bank, and they told her the account had been closed weeks ago. Access restricted, every bill now in her name, and just like that, the silence spoke, not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of truth. You don't get to tear a man down, erase his name from the house he built, and still live like he owes you comfort. I didn't slam the door, I just changed the locks. I didn't scream about loyalty, I just shut off the faucet they'd been drinking from, because I realized they never planned to refill the well. She texted, "Why are you doing this?" I never responded, because she already knew. The moment she watched me walk out of that birthday dinner, and didn't come after me, she sealed it. Justice doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes with paperwork. Sometimes it looks like a house with no lights on. Sometimes it sounds like a phone that doesn't ring back. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was just finally protecting myself. They didn't expect the silence to last. At first, they thought it was a phase, thought I'd cool off, that I'd come back like I always did. Quiet, tired, ready to fix what I didn't break. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and nothing came from me. No texts, no calls, no footsteps at the door. I saw it in their eyes the day they bumped into me at the courthouse. Clarisse looked like she'd seen a ghost, not because she was afraid, but because she finally realized the man she dismissed was never coming back. She didn't say a word, didn't ask for forgiveness, just stood there, papers in hand, lips parted like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the language for regret. Isaiah, he didn't even look me in the eye, just stood behind her, shoulders low, mouth tight, like someone replaying the moment he told the only father he ever had that he wasn't real enough to matter. They didn't cry, they didn't shout, they didn't beg, but I saw it, in their stillness, in the way Clarisse clutched her purse like she was trying to hold on to something that already slipped through, in the way Isaiah kept shifting his feet, like he wanted to run, but didn't know where he'd be welcome. Sometimes the loudest scream is the one they choke down when they realize too late that the man they thought they could discard was the man holding everything together. I didn't gloat, I didn't speak, I just nodded once, and kept walking, because I didn't need revenge anymore. They were already living inside it. I'm not the same man anymore, not the one who used to stay up late ironing church clothes for a boy who would grow up to call me a mistake, not the man who broke his back to keep a roof over a family who quietly erased him while smiling in his face. No, that version of me doesn't exist anymore. I still wake up early, still drink my coffee black, still fold my clothes just the way I used to. But now, there's space, space where guilt used to live, space where resentment used to grow. I don't hate Clarisse, I don't hate Isaiah, I just don't carry them anymore. Not in my body, not in my breath, not in my prayers. There's peace in being unseen, once you stop needing to be recognized by people who never saw you in the first place. I wrote a book, Borrowed Sons, Broken Fathers. It was never meant for the world. Just pages I poured my truth into so I wouldn't drown in it. But it found people. Fathers who gave too much. Men who were told they didn't matter after years of mattering quietly. It gave me a voice I didn't know I still had. I don't smile the same. I don't trust as easily. I don't believe that sacrifice guarantees love. But I do believe this. Walking away doesn't make you weak. Sometimes it makes you whole. I used to think being a man meant holding everything in. Now I know being a man means knowing what not to carry anymore. And if all I ever get out of those 19 years is the man I became after walking away from them, Then maybe I didn't lose. Maybe I found something better. There's this jacket I used to wear. Brown leather, worn at the elbows, torn seam under the left sleeve I kept meaning to fix but never did. It wasn't special, didn't cost much, but it was mine. I wore it the night Clarisse told me she was pregnant. I wore it the first time Isaiah called me dad. I wore it to parent-teacher conferences, church and those cold winter games where I sat in the back, cheering quietly so I wouldn't embarrass him. That jacket was like armor, familiar, fitted to me. It smelled like hard work and memory, and I wore it to that birthday dinner. The night he said I was a waste of his bloodline, I had it on, sitting there, the candles flickering across the leather, like they were trying to remind me who I was. I folded the napkin, I stood, I walked out, still wearing it, still holding on to a version of myself that hadn't accepted the truth yet. But the night I drove by and saw another man in my slippers, the night I found out they'd changed the deed behind my back, I went home, stood in front of the mirror, and took off that jacket, folded it slowly, laid it on the shelf. I haven't worn it since. That jacket represented the man who kept trying to earn what should have been freely given: loyalty, love, respect. And when I took it off, I wasn't just letting go of a piece of clothing. I was letting go of the man who begged to be seen. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't what you do to them, it's what you finally release from yourself. And that jacket, it's still in my closet, not as a reminder of who I was, but as proof of who I no longer need to be. I haven't spoken to them since. No messages, no holidays, no updates. Isaiah's got a child now from what I heard. Maybe he holds that baby different than I held him. Maybe he understands a little more now. Or maybe not. Either way, I'm not waiting on a phone call. Because I didn't leave to be chased. I left to breathe. And once you taste air that isn't filled with proving your worth, you don't go back to suffocating for people who never learned how to value it. Final line. Quiet, poetic, cold. They thought I walked away bitter, but the truth is, I didn't walk away bitter, I just walked away whole. It's been months since I took off the jacket, since I shut the door for good, since I finally found peace. But a week ago, something arrived, a letter, no return address, my name handwritten on the envelope in a script I hadn't seen in years, and inside, one sentence on a torn piece of paper: you think it's over, but it never was. Clarisse always did know how to twist the knife without showing her hand, but now, I don't run, I don't panic, I just sit with it, watch, prepare, because sometimes the storm comes after the silence. Sometimes I replay it all in my head, not the betrayal, not the silence, but my response, not the papers I filed, or the locks I changed, or the calls I stopped returning, but the moment I chose to protect what was left of me. Was I wrong to protect what was mine? Was I wrong to let go of the people who clapped while I collapsed quietly in front of them? Was I wrong to stop pouring into cups that never once refilled mine? Some would say I was cold, some would say I should have taken the high road, stayed quiet, stayed kind, stayed useful. But ask yourself this: if someone walked into your soul and emptied it, would you hand them the key again? Or would you change the locks and finally come home to yourself? I didn't seek revenge. I sought peace. I didn't destroy a family. I stopped bleeding for one that already let me die in silence. So I'll ask you, not for sympathy, not for applause, just one question. What would you have done if the people you protected with your whole being looked you in the eye and told you that you never mattered? They thought I'd do nothing. They thought the man who carried the weight would collapse without it. They thought my silence was surrender, that my loyalty was permanent, that my love would blind me forever. But I didn't scream, I didn't strike, I just watched and waited. I just waited until they handed me the rope, and I let them tie the knot themselves. There was no camera in that restaurant when he said it, no applause when I walked away, no one following me with commentary or clarity, just my breath, my boots, and a truth I couldn't unhear. Nobody spoke for me when I paid the bills in silence, when I folded his little shirts, when I cancelled that joint account. Nobody narrated the nights I stayed awake, wondering if I was losing myself, or finally meeting the man I was supposed to become. This was never their story to tell. No wife, no son, no friend in the corner whispering, "He tried." This was me. Every frame, every cut, every choice. No dialogue tags, no outside voice, just mine, my pain, my patience, my justice. 5 months passed, no calls returned, no messages answered. I stayed gone, not hidden, just unavailable. I poured everything into the pages. The book wasn't written to go viral. It wasn't made to be found. It was written to survive. Me, Borrowed Sons, Broken Fathers. That was the title. I published it under a pen name. Didn't tell a soul. Just uploaded it into the world like a letter in a bottle. If it reached someone, good. If it didn't, at least I said it. But then it spread, quietly. Men began quoting it online, sharing pieces in fatherhood forums. Podcasts picked it up, a few pages at a time. Nobody knew the face behind the words, and I liked it that way. And one afternoon, I heard through someone who didn't know they were telling me, Isaiah had been seen at the city library, holding it. He read it cover to cover, sat there in silence for hours, didn't say a word when he left. But something in him had changed. They said when he closed the book, his hands were shaking. Now I've told you my story, the whole thing, the loyalty, the silence, the pain, the weight of walking away, but I'm not the only one who's ever been pushed to the edge by the people they fed, clothed, defended. So let me ask you, would you have fought back, or just walked away? What would you do if the child you raised, the one who once called you dad with pride, looked you in the face and said you were never real to begin with? Would you stay, keep bleeding to prove a point they never cared to see? Or would you do what I did, disappear in silence, and let the echo tell the truth? If you've ever had to rebuild from betrayal, drop a comment below. If you've ever loved someone who erased you, this space is yours, because sometimes the strongest men are the ones who walk away with nothing but their name.